good morning, and or whatever time it is for you. Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And here we are. So we had read verse 15 and talked about the wealthy shall not give more, the poor shall not give less, from the machatzit hashekel, to give the gift, the truma, to Hashem, to atone for their souls, or for your souls. Lechaper al nafshotechem, Rashi. Shelo tenagpu al yedei minyan, so that you not have to deal with some kind of plague, right, by means of counting, having counted out. So that's one reason. Davar acher, another interpretation. Chaper al nafshotechem, to atone for your souls. Lefi shiramaz lahem kan, because he in these passages he alludes shlosha trumot, to three different kinds of truma. We've mentioned this a few times. Definitely not something that we might have inferred had we not had our traditional understanding of these passages. Shenichtav kam, but there's evidence for why. Trumat Hashem shalosh pamim, because it says specifically the gift to the Lord three times, or the free will offering, however you understand this word truma. And I think it sort of, I feel like it has something to do with lifting up, to give something more significance, something like that, in designating it. So there's some sense of designation of something that you own and designating it to Hashem in this case. But it's mentioned, that phrase is mentioned three times. And he goes on to tell us exactly what each one refers to. Excuse me. Achat Trumat Adanim. This is not going to be new material here. So the first one is the truma, the designation or the gift to pay for or to create the sockets for the boards of the tabernacle. Shemina'an, okay, that he counts them. He's taking the census of the Israelites. Keshehitchilu benidvat hamishkan, when they were all involved in all the other gifts for the Mishkan, for the tabernacle. So, I mean, they brought other materials as well, but this particular census was done in connection with that. Unetano kol echad ve'echad, and each and every individual gave towards it, or not knew, they gave, each and every one, machatzit hashekel, a half shekel, va'ala lema'at hakikar, and that it added up to 100 talents. Shne'emar, as it states, the kesef in Exodus 38, the kesef, when it starts to discuss what the various, the accounting of the various component parts of the tabernacle, of its construction, the kesef pekudei ha'edah, and the silver from the accounting or the taking note of the community, me'at kikar, was 100 talents. Umehem ne'esu ha'adamim, and from this was made the sockets. Shne'emar, as it states, Vayhi me'at kikar ha'kesef, and that 100 talents of silver, etc., went to create the adanim, the sockets. V'hashenit, and the second truma, that's mentioned, afhi al yedei minyan, that too was a collection by means of this census, by everyone contributing to count the numbers of the Israelite males 20 years and up. Shemina'an mi shehukam hamishkan. They were also taken account. A census was taken. They were counted once the Mishkan was erected. After it was erected, there was another census taken, Hu Haminyan Ha'amur, and that is referenced. This particular census is accounted for or described Betchilat Chomesh HaPekudim, and that is mentioned in this. In, sometimes the book of Numbers is referred to as Chomesh HaPekudim. So the Pekudim would be the ones that were counted, and Chomesh usually refers to a fifth, so it could be referring to the Chumash. I have to tell you that I haven't looked up the translation of this particular phrase. Lauren, or any of you who might have a translation of Rashi, do they have this translated, this phrase translated?
No, they don't. They just, I was just gonna, I meant to look it up. It just say Exodus.
Well, this would be, no, this would be referring to Numbers. So it's
Well,
it's the census mentioned in Numbers.
so it says Exodus here. It says, well, it says, there's a quote from Exodus, I guess, but no, they don't mention anything about Numbers.
Later on in the Rashi.
Later on, they get into Numbers, but
Right.
not on a thing you've gotten to yet.
Really?
They
Okay.
have a quote from Numbers.
Right. Numbers chapter 1.
Right.
So there's Bechad LaChodesh Hasheni, on the first day of this second month, B'Shana
Right.
Hashenit, in the second year, V'natnu kol echad machatzit hashekel, and everyone contributed a half shekel. And this particular census was V'hein liknot mehen korbanot tzibur, and this particular collection went to purchase public offerings, community offerings.
Sorry, could
Yes.
I just ask, Chumash HaPekudim up there, is that just, are you saying that that's just maybe another name for Sefer Bamidbar?
It is another name for Sefer Amidbar. Yes.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
as best as I have been able to make out. But sadly, I did not actually look up a translation of these words. I mean, obviously, Chumash or Chomesh. Again, I don't have the vowels in front of me, so I can't say for sure.
But you've seen that as a name given for
Correct. That's the
Sefer
yes.
Bamidbar.
Right, and as we're sort of talking about it, you think of the English name for the book of Numbers, right? So normally we refer to books by their opening, the first significant word in the book, and in this case, though, it's a translation, you could say, of Numbers, right? That's what Chomesh HaPekudim means, Numbers,
Right.
the book of Numbers. And not only that, what's sort of interesting is that so often Deuteronomy, right, is also, it's called Devarim, but it's also referenced as Mishneh Torah, which means Deuteronomy, second law.
Right. So, yeah, when I'm looking it up, I just see it referred to as Numbers.
Yeah.
I don't see a translation.
So Chumash HaPekudim.
It does say Chumash.
Yes.
It does say Chumash.
Yes. So again, so it could be that it's saying that it is the book of Numbers, Pekudim, right, in the Chumash. But that's what that phrase means. Right. So thank you. I think we puzzled it out together. Right.
And does Sefer Vayikra also have another name of like Torat Kohanim or something
Yes,
like that?
I think it does. It's sometimes called Torah Kohanim. Of course, for us, we call it Leviticus, which isn't quite Torah Kohanim, right?
But
Levites.
More about
Levites. It's the
right.
story of the Levites.
Right.
Yeah.
Could it be that other people were calling? Well, we usually go by history. Could it be that other people were calling them? There was two groups of people who were calling them different names. So he put both in.
Could be. I mean, I know that Chumash HaPekudim is definitely, just like Mishneh Torah. It's not an uncommon reference, but you have an interesting theory there. I mean, my feeling is that sometimes, I think it's a human thing that when you love something, you like to have more than one name for it. And so I think it's a way of expressing love for the Torah. by having more than one name for a particular book. So I
Yeah,
think,
but he wouldn't call it that if other people weren't calling it that.
oh yeah, no, he's
Right,
getting
yeah,
it
no,
out of
right.
tradition. Absolutely.
Right,
No,
maybe it was an older name and they just kept it because they wanted to respect the older name as well as the newer name.
well, I would think, okay, this is just my theory, is that Bamidbar would be the older name and Chumash HaPekudim that would be the way I would go, because all the books are referenced that way. Although Malachim and Shmuel aren't named that way, right? Shmuel and Malachim are not referenced that way, and nor is Divrei HaYamim, the book of Chronicles, which again, Divrei HaYamim means chronicles.
Mhm.
So there's, I don't know if anyone has ever written a scholarly article about, the Hebrew versus the Greek names of the books, and the fact that within the Jewish tradition, there's also a reference to these books essentially using a modified translation of the Greek. I've never even given this any thought before in the way that we're doing right now.
Oh, I'm sure somebody's done it.
Yeah, you would think, right? You would
It's
think.
it's a really good
Yeah.
summary for
I know
somebody.
I know I'm taking time up with editorializing, but I will never forget that I had thought I'd come up with an original bon mot. Lauren, you will appreciate it. The one that says, "No, nothing is impossible if you don't have to do it yourself." Right? And I thought that was original, and you looked it up, and you found some places where that quote was there. I seem to recollect. Maybe you do too.
Yeah, it was
But you know what
Alan or
Ecclesiastes teaches us.
Yes, there's nothing new under the sun.
Who Under the Sun.
Exactly.
Yeah, but by
I
the
mean,
way,
but that doesn't mean you're not original for coming up with it and you had never heard it before, but you're just
Right.
not the first one to come up with it.
correct. Yeah, there's a whole discussion about people saying that there's never done before, and not to think that that's not the case. Let's keep going because we're making progress here. And the time just zips away so quickly. All right. So בחודש השני, בשנה השנית, ונתנו כל אחד, there we said, right, the korbanot tzibur, shel kol shana, of each year v'shana. So each and every year they would take this particular machatzita shekel to purchase the offerings for that giving year. Vehishvu bahim aniyim v'ashirim. And in this case, both the poor and the wealthy were equal. Okay. V'alota truma, and regarding that particular, I almost feel like translating truma. It's such a difficult word to translate, but the word designation, I don't know if it does enough of. I mean, clearly it's gift, right? Designated gift. Sorry to have to use two words, right? Designated gift. Ne'emar. It states regarding that lechaper al nafshotechem, to atone for your souls, right? V'hakarbanot lekapara heim ba'im, because in fact the sacrifices come as a kapara. They come as an atonement. V'hashlishit, and the third truma, he trumat hamishkan. That's simply called the gift of the mishkan, of the tabernacle. Kamoshe Nemar. And that is, it says at the beginning of Parshat Truma, it's talking about all these gifts. You will recollect it because we did study it, and that's the third Truma. And it says, Shemot Lamed Hey, chapter 35 of the book of Exodus, Kol Meirim Trumat Kesef V'Nechoshet, all the designated gifts of silver and copper, V'lo Haita Yad Kulam Shabeh. But in this particular gift, they were not all equal. People didn't bring the same identical gifts or the values. Shaveh ba ela ish mashin nadvo libo. So to finish the phrase, right? So regarding these gifts, people brought whatever they felt like bringing. Whatever his heart moved him to do, he would bring. So 2 out of the 3 it was, and it was for the sake of counting, but the third one, which was for the building, right, that would have been the building fund and the original construction of the tabernacle, that was just whatever anybody wanted to do. If they didn't feel like doing it, they didn't have to do it. Here we go. V'lakachta et chesef hakipurim. The print is just not real clear because I believe there should be a dagesh right in there, in the kaf. Okay, hakipurim ve'et b'nei Yisrael, from the children of Israel, v'natata oto, and you shall give it, or designate it for avodat ohel moed, the service of the tent of meeting, v'haya livnei Yisrael zikaron, and it should be a remembrance, lifnei Hashem, before Hashem, for the children of Israel, l'chaper af nashotechem, to atone for their souls, for their nefesh.
For
So,
your souls.
yeah, I'm sorry, yes, for your souls. Otherwise, it would be nafshotehem. So, thank you, Lauren. Just interesting, right? How this issue of atonement, the sense of, what is our place as human beings? How do we stand in this world in the face of the Almighty? Here's the Rashi. V'natata oto alavodot mo'el mo'ed, and you shall give it over for the service of the tent of meeting. Lamadata shenitztavu limnotan betchilat nedavat hamishkan. So you learn that they were commanded to take a census at the beginning of the gifts of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. Achar ma'aseh ha'egel. This actually happened after the golden calf incident, the incident of the calf. Mipnei shenichnas bahem magefa, because a pestilence entered into them. There was a plague amongst them, kamosha katuv, as is mentioned in Exodus Lamed Bet 32, vayigof Hashem et ha'am. So magefa, vayigof, that's the verb, that Hashem sent a plague against the people. Mashal letzon hachaviva al ba'aleha. So there's a parable to sheep, or a sheep perhaps, that was beloved of its owner, shinafal ba dever, that I believe, otherwise it could be davar, but I think it does mean some kind of pestilence. Omishi pasak, and when it ended, Amar lo la ro'eh, he said to the shepherd, the owner said to the shepherd, Bavakasha mimcha. Oh, so tzon is the flock. It's not talking about an individual sheep. It's talking about a flock. Okay. He said to the shepherd, Bavakasha mimcha, please, mane etzono, please count my sheep, v'da kama notar bahem, and let me know how many remain. Lehodia shehi chaveva alav, to let us, that informs us, it lets us know, because they were something beloved to him. The if shalomar, and one cannot say, shahaminyan hazeh hu amor b'chomesh hapikudim. You cannot argue that this is the same census that is mentioned in the book of Numbers. Shaharei ne'emar bo, which, because regarding that it states, be'echad lachodesh hasheni, it says on the first day of the second month, v'hamishkan hukam be'echad lachodesh harishon. And we are told that the tabernacle was erected on the first of the first month. Shne'emar, as it says, Exodus chapter 40, by Yom HaChodesh Harishon, on that day of the first month, Be'echad LaChodesh, on the first day of that month, Takim, etc. You shall set up the Mishkan. Umi haminyan hazeh, and from this particular census or counting, na'asu ha'adanim, the sockets were made, mishkalim shalo, from its shekels, from the coins that were collected, shine'emar, as it states, there in chapter 38, Vayhi me'at kikar kesef, it says, and the 100 talents of silver were used to form or to smelt the sockets of silver, etc. Halamadata. So from this you learn, you can infer, sheshtayim hayu, that there were in fact two censuses, achat betchilat nidvatam, one at the very beginning when they came to donate the various elements of the Mishkan, achar Yom HaKippurim, that happened after the Yom HaKippurim, b'shana rishona, in the first year, v'achat b'shana shniya, and another one in the second year, be'iyar, in the month of Iyar. That would be Nisan is the first month, Iyar is the second month, Misha Hakum Hukam Hamishkan, after the tabernacle was erected. The im tomar, okay, but should you argue, v'chi efshar shebishnehem hayu Yisrael shavim 600,000 ו3,000 ו500 ו50, okay, right, that the Israelites were exactly the same number, 600,000, 603,000 and 550, Sharei Bekesef Pekudei Ha'ida, because through the silver of the census of the community, Ne'emar Kain, it was stated, this is stated, Uvachomesh HaPikudim, and regarding in the book of Numbers, Afbo Ne'emar Kain, that the same number is mentioned regarding that. Vahiyu kol hapikudim 600,003 ו550, says there, they were 100,600, right?
600,000, 603,000.
603,000 and 550, okay? Halo bishnei shanim hayu, and that they were in 2 years. V'ifshar shalo hayu b'sha'at minyan harishon b'nei yuntet shana. So here we go. Well, in the first year, they would have been people who were 19 years of age, shelo nimnu, who wouldn't have been counted, uvishniya nesu bnei kaf, and in the next year, they now were 20 years old, so they would have been counted. Chatshuva ladavar, okay, an answer, a response to this matter, etzel shnot ha'anashim bashana achat, you can say that regarding the years of the people, or that in the first year, b'shana achat nimnu, they were counted. Aval the minyan yitziat Mitzrayim hayu shtei shanim. But regarding the from the exodus of Egypt, they were 2 years. Lefi, because shele yitziat Mitzrayim minim minisan. From the exodus of Egypt, one counts from the month of Nisan. Kamo sheshaninu b'mesechet Rosh Hashanah, as we learn in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, v'nidva hamishkan barishona, and the construction of the tabernacle was in the first, the hukam bashniya, but it was actually erected in the second year, kish shenit chadsha shana, because the year was renewed. It turned to the next year, b'achad b'Nisan, on the 1st of Nisan, and that's when they say that the tabernacle was erected. Aval shnot ha'anashim menuyan, but the actual ages of the people were counted. The minyan shnot olam, they are counted by, in other words, how old a person is was dependent on the actual of the world, meaning matchilim mitishrei, that you begin in the month of Tishrei. That both, so from that basis, you can say that both both censuses were in the same year, because you start
Oh,
1 year later, the first year, okay, because you're talking about their ages.
Yeah,
So,
but so the 19-year-olds in the first one were still 19 in the second one is the idea,
not
right?
necessarily.
or the other way around. Okay. Yeah.
Where they had a
Yes,
birthday
they
in
were both.
between.
Yeah, but that's not the way they're counting them, I guess. They're counting them on the basis of not their individual birthdays, but they're counting them as a group. Okay.
So like horses,
Yeah, I guess
like
so.
racehorses,
It sounds
that
like
they all have the birthday
Yeah.
of January 1st.
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
is that how it works?
Yeah,
at least
that's how they do 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, even if they're born 2 days before. Yeah.
right. Right. And I know
Sure,
they're
but
like, so
some
for
people would
example,
have died. The number would have
Right.
changed anyway, because some people die.
And okay, the golden calf happens in between.
that
So
is,
some people are slaughtered during that time.
that's true. That's true.
So they needed a new count.
But wait a second. It says, yeah, but they're apparently, okay. It says Haya b'Tishrei la'achar Yom Kippurim, right? This happened in the Tishrei following Yom Kippurim, shenitratzeh hamakom Yisrael, because it was on Yom Kippurim. So the golden calf takes place on the 17th of Tammuz. Okay, that's the date of it. Okay, and so the year changes in Tishrei. So their birth Yom Kippurim is on the 10th of Tishrei, so it's in the following year. So when so that's when the tabernacle was erected. So it still would have happened in the same year. Lisloach lahem, to forgive them. V'nitztavu ala mishkan, and that's when they were commanded after Yom Kippurim. That's when they were commanded to erect the Mishkan. V'hasheni be'echad be'iyar, and so the second census took place on the 1st of Iyar. Now figure this out, right? Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. Yeah, it's still in the same year, but it's all following, and it's all after the same Yom Kippurim. So they're figuring people didn't die from the 10th of Tishrei to the 1st of Iyar. So let's see. Just
That makes no sense.
counting months. Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, Nisan, Iyar. So it's 8 months. Well, it's actually 7 months later. That in those 7 months they did not.
Yeah.
No one died.
That's just funny.
Well, it is fun, but remember the whole story is pretty amazing. The point is
Are we
that
counting the mixed multitude also? Because it says Israelites. So it's just
yeah.
the Israelites, and there's the mixed multitude that's still hanging around.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we are only talking about Israelites.
Right.
The whole issue of the mixed multitude and how and their relationship to all the people there is sort of an interesting one. And again, this is all, as you start to dig deeper, these are all subjects of very good questions. I mean, was there intermarriage amongst them then? Did some of the mixed multitude males
I would assume
marry
so.
Israelite women and vice versa? I mean, one would think that's what happened.
And if they came into the clan by marriage, then they would be counted.
Right, exactly. And not only that,
Right.
okay, not only that, there's also the issue of the fact that at Mount Sinai, when they all accepted the Torah, it doesn't say that the mixed multitude didn't accept the Torah.
So did they
Right,
all become
but-
Israelites at that time?
Yeah, I would think so. But the problem would be, what tribe would they be, ascribed to?
Israel.
Well, that's not a
Well,
tribe.
eventually, yeah,
But through
but
marriage,
true.
they would
Yeah.
be unaffiliated. They would.
Right. So what's happening as we try to bring this down to the ground, right, and not just up in heaven,
Right.
some of these questions become interesting, right? Let's see if we can finish. But that is, we're almost done with this Rashi, so let's do that. Al avodat ohel moed, for the for the service of the tent of meeting, and this would be hein adanim shenasubo. That would be referring to the sockets that were made from that first sentences, okay, that were made from it. That's it. That's all the Rashi on the issue of the census. Complicated Rashi. And I'm going to stop here.
Thank you. That answered my questions that I was writing into my Tanakh. It's like.
Well, thank you. Let me stop the recording here.